currently only based on YouTube. So yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and you can find us on my YouTube channel, which is Cassiroll, which is spelled Cassiroll. So
One of us will throw that in the chat too for any of
Yes.
our audience members who'd like to check that out. And yeah, checking some of your stuff out that I did over the last week. You have some really impressive art, and I really admire the visual novel style of your campaign. And you have a really cool universe as well. If you want to give us a really quick overview, I know you have a video on your YouTube that kind of gives an overview of the world that the Chosen One campaign takes place in.
yeah,
But
yeah, it's pretty brief, I would say. The our intro video mostly focuses on the cast, obviously, because it's a meet the cast video. But it does talk about a little bit about this is a world that is on its precipice, essentially. So it is the first couple hundred years after it is formed. It is essentially the earliest that we can go with there still being like societies and structures and things in place, so that we're not wandering around with cavemen and stuff. And the world is called Absalom, and there's currently only one known continent, which just means they haven't explored past that in the universe, which is Varun, which is where everyone currently lives. And there are three main kind of like regions of Varun, and that is Solari, who has a deity known as, Sol, who has a deity known as Solari, who's the goddess of the sun, power and wealth. And then there's Dendara, which is has the main deity Dara, and she is wisdom, motherhood, and another one. I can't remember what the other one is off the top of my head right now. But then the other one is Winaria, whose main deity is Winona, who is the goddess of like sleep, and the moon and other things like that. So those are the prime deities, but we have a whole pantheon besides that is slowly kind of introduced over the course of the campaign.
it's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, and from just like the words, you got a pretty in-depth lore structure going on. So
Yeah.
and we're really interested in that kind of thing here. And so like to just start off with, how did you begin constructing this universe? Like what steps do you take or did you take to like lay the bedrock to build this?
So we started playing as a group with the friends that are in this and also outside of this. We started playing a couple years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I think, at this point, and I was our first DM for our group. And after that, we've branched out, obviously. But so the first world that I created was kind of my starting point for all of my other ones. So we've played in different time points throughout all of this. We've played in games where it's like super, super into the future. And, like society has kind of like turned kind of strange and weird, and it feels kind of like Hunger Games in that campaign.
Okay.
And that's like a side campaign that we do on the side, because I like doing things still in this universe in different time points. It's especially fun for the players, because they get Easter eggs and things about how things came to be playing in a game that's at the beginning, or seeing things in the future and being like, oh, I know what this is a reference to. It's fun for them. The audience necessarily doesn't need to have that knowledge, but again, it's fun for the players more so than anything. So we've gone really far in the future. We did a modern campaign, which was super fun. Which was pretty much just a one-to-one comparison between being in the United States, which was like, it got super into the future. Everyone kind of forgot their magical roots, and then they all became awakened to magic again, and they started to notice things in the world and people, who suddenly had like multiple eyes or like limbs or like were growing scales that they could suddenly see and things like that. So like that was really fun too. So it's kind of like seeing how magic develops throughout this universe and world, and then how it kind of starts in the beginning, a very high fantasy, high magic based world, very traditional almost in that sense, but having elements and things that are also from those games is kind of how I like built upon it. And so the pantheon's pretty big at this point. I think I don't know what you constitute big. I think we're at like 15 or something like that deities that are pretty fleshed out. And then every campaign, new ones get added between like fiends and eldritch beasts and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of how it started. Was we started somewhere in the middle, I think, was the first campaign, and then we went modern day, and then we went super into the future, and now we've kind of completely gone back to the beginning.
That's a roadmap that we've we followed as well
Yeah.
with the way we built our own universe.
It's really
That's
good. It's a good method to do that type
yeah,
of thing, because nothing nothing builds a world better than just sitting down and making a game in it.
Yeah.
Creating the world around the players and having them make some impact on it. And so moving it around time to time, you sort of get these little chunks of fleshed out history in your world.
How much would you say your players are involved in determining, like that pantheon, or how many of these eldritch beasts or what fiends join it or something from one
Yeah,
campaign to the
yeah.
next?
I would say it's definitely dependent on who they enter. I've had when people enter and they want to play characters that are more religious, I tend to either build gods around that, or I see like, hey, what are your things? Like, what is something that you're super for or super against? And I'll tell you the gods that are closest to that. I won't give you more info on them until we kind of start to feel what you want. If none of the gods fit, then we'll make someone from scratch essentially together. So the first, or not the first, I think it was technically the third campaign that we did. Um, Someone came to me and they were like, I don't want them to know anything about my god. And that was the modern day one. So that character was actually, that character was an atheist and he was a cleric in that world. So he found and met God throughout the game, essentially, which was very fun to go from a character that was super super against it and then to be thrown into like super high fantasy creatures in a world essentially and have to accept that to be able to use his magic. So I had to build someone around that who would still be willing to give someone magic who doesn't know anything about them. So we created she was like a god of like magical creatures or something like that, and that was really fun to build that god. And it was fun because he didn't know anything about them, but I didn't actually plan them until later into the game. So he kept describing them vaguely. He'd draw really like simple doodles and things and be like, I think this is what my god looks like. And then from those little hints and things that he kind of made up along the way, I developed this god. So that was really fun to do. Other more recently, it's been the thing where people come to me and they're like, okay, here I want a god. Same player actually. He was like, I want a god that is against like necromancy. I want them to be someone that a very lawful good character could go for. And then based on that, I'm like, okay, you've got these gods to pick from. And then he grabbed one, and it was a god I actually had not developed very well yet. So it's been very fun to behind the scenes, because that god is actually a dormant god that no one knows where it is. Behind the scenes, be developing that. It also gives me time. It gave me time to kind of go into the campaign and learn more about the characters and the scenes and things that they're in, and then behind the scenes be developing what that god actually is and what they're about. So I think that's probably the easiest method that I've found, is having people pick and then either fitting the gods to them over time or finding ways to kind of adjust them, especially like I'm very fluid. Nothing is ever set in stone. So the second someone takes more interest in a god, I will usually bend them and fit them to what the story needs, essentially. I've got very few that are like, this is what they are, they can't be changed. So, and that's what I have found has been the best storytelling method for that.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Something, a philosophy that I try to follow as a DM as well, is kind of like let your players guide your creativity and use them almost as like a fertilizer to grow the ideas that really mean stuff in the world. So
Maybe don't call your players shit though.
well, come on, no, fertile soil, not but
Miracle Grow.
yeah. So in terms of the world that you've got going on here, it sounds like the timeline stretches like a really long time. If you have like going
Yeah.
from like prehistory to like a modern version of the United States, how many years
Well, and beyond, it sounds like.
would you, and beyond, yeah, how many years would
Yeah.
you say that you've got going on here?
I think at some point, it's not come out yet, but I think at some point it's stated, the actual number is stated somewhere in the podcast. For some reason, someone asked in the middle of a session, and I was like, I think the world's like this long or something.
And then you're like, crap, that's a really important piece of lore that I have to
Very
find.
specific
I know that.
I'm going to be tied to this
Yep.
forever now, huh?
I think I estimated, because it's not a one-to-one
Right.
between like this. So it's not like millions of years or anything like that. Like,
Right.
it's not like we're in dinosaur ages. So it's, I think I estimated 5,000.
Okay.
I think about was what I estimated from the very earliest point to the end point that I've gone to. It goes past that, obviously. The world's not going to end at that point, but it continues, and that is the farthest point that I have planned.
Okay.
So.
Do you have plans to go even further in time? I mean, I assume that this end, the most furthest you've got, doesn't end in the universe's destruction. Oh God! Oops.
That depends on what the players do,
right,
right?
Yeah,
yeah.
it's always up to the players.
Mhm.
Because even though this is a prequel, I did tell them, like, don't be afraid to mess anything up. The
Right.
audience isn't gonna know. So if they're just like, they've seen people in this world, in this, because obviously there's elves and things. There's people who
Right.
can live a really long time, and because they've played several games, they've seen people who are like, they're like, I think that person's, in the future they're not
Right.
alive. So what if we kill them here? And it's just like, you can do that. You can play this game and see what happens. Like, it doesn't have to stick to what you've done before. No one else will ever know. So yeah, and I'm like, but also don't do meta knowledge. Don't be like, I know you were a
Right.
villain in another campaign,
Uh-huh.
so I'm immediately gonna
Yeah.
go, But my players are really good about that. They're really, really good about that, especially if they have outside knowledge that they know an NPC is bad. They're super good about not ever letting that influence their actions when interacting with them. Because there's been people who have played in some of my games and know that, and there's been people who obviously don't know that and come into some of my games, and they're very good about keeping those interactions genuine without having that outside influence. And I lost the question somewhere along the way.
Oh, that's
so.
fine. I forgot
I
what
don't
I
remember what it
said
was
as
either,
well.
so.
So you definitely answered it,
Comment on
and yeah, better than anyone else had answered that question before, probably. Yeah, what are some of your oh man, I lost the word here. Inspirations. I found it again, laying on the ground. What are your
Yeah.
inspirations for the world? Because it sounds like you have many different settings across time periods, so you probably draw from different sources in order to inform the work when you go, to like the America-esque world, or
Yeah.
time period. You're drawing from a different source. So yeah, what are some of the sources in fiction that you draw from?
So it's one of those things where usually when I am planning and writing, I don't actually specifically seek out inspiration. It's something that happens very kind of like organically, where my players will come to me after the fact, after we've played a session or had a certain scenario or arc, and been like, hey, this feels exactly like this thing. And I'm like, it kind of is. And so it's usually not like a conscious choice where I'm like, hey, we're gonna do this fun thing, and I'm specifically gonna rip off like Avatar: The Last Airbender or something, and take all of the story beats and do that. But it's usually more so after the fact, people point out it to me, and then I'm like, yeah, that's definitely where that idea came from, and where that like inspiration came from. When I am planning and when I'm writing, the number one thing that I do for inspiration is listen to music. So I listen to a lot of, especially lyric-based music, because that helps me planning. All of the NPCs and the campaign itself have Spotify playlists. So if I'm writing a scene that a specific NPC is in, or if I'm just trying to get in the mood and like ramp myself up to plan a session, I'll listen to the overall campaign one. I also have personal playlists for the PCs that I've asked for music from, or add music that my players have given me before. And that's helped me kind of develop things around them too. And that's just how I am, because I am an artist, I am an animator. And so my brain works best when I'm thinking about things that don't already have visuals to them.
Interesting.
So that's like my number one inspiration, I would say, in terms of writing, is listening to music.
Okay. So
Yeah,
here's
very
an
nice.
interesting question. If you had to pick a song that the best exemplifies chosen ones, what song would
I
that be?
actually
gonna
can't
say,
tell
which
you,
one?
because
I
fun
know.
fact, this entire campaign is based on one song, so I cannot tell you.
I'm sure there is one.
Interesting.
Oh,
All right,
man.
that's really cool.
Someone already found it, and I had
Yeah.
to remove it from our Discord, because they were like, I was listening to a song recently and I'm noticing some similarities, and I was like, and now
You
I
shut
have
up.
to remove that. I have to remove that from the Discord. And I'm like, you have found a secret. do not tell anyone. You know.
Oh, that's
I need to
interesting.
make a campaign based off of the Mariner's Revenge song. September. That would be good.
Yeah, no, that's a
Stealing that
really
idea from you.
interesting way of
That
gaining
is.
inspiration. I've never really thought about doing that. All of my
Yeah,
stuff
that's
comes from
definitely
like
not my.
because I'm a a creative writer, and so all of my fun little things come from like plot constructs. Like I see the plot in a shape, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna steal that and put it into my campaign and somehow. And so that's a really cool way of structuring the plot or even the theme, I suppose, from a song. That's really really cool. I like that
That is
idea a lot.
interesting.
Yeah.
I tend toward bad TV for my inspiration. that's
So
definitely
I mean,
not
there's
much.
definitely
don't-
that in there too.
It's
You know,
good Xena.
I am
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of like horror and thriller based stuff. Which I mean, if you watch our show, if you pull out specific episodes and things, my cast is super good about keeping the mood light, which is great for some of the things that come up later. So it's like even if we have really dark moments or really intense or emotional things, they are super good about pulling us out of that. It's why I have such struggle like categorizing us because people are
Mhm.
like, what's your show? And I'm like, well, we have comedy, we have drama, we have horror, we have thriller. There is not one thing to us. We are a lot of different elements because we're a lot of different people. I am someone who, if I had the choice, would be running like a very grim, dark campaign. And the last one I ran was one that was the modern day one. Um, but that's why it ended up ending is it just got too dark. And you know, sometimes it's just like this is escapism, and
Yeah.
we want to have a good time. So if things are too real in the real world right now, and things are too real in the game, it's time to pull back. So
Yeah.
that's something I've really tried to focus on, especially for this campaign, is to always try and bring us back to one of those good moments, even if there's dark stuff. Like we never want that to become the like plateau of where we are on any individual scene. So yeah.
So kind of going along off of that, and this kind of speaks to you as a DM, unless it's you as a role player, or you as a DM, unless it's you as a world builder. So in terms of like themes, like you have some dark themes. How do you, and the first episode didn't have, I wouldn't call it particularly dark, but yeah.
It's slow burn for that stuff.
Okay.
It's something that's going to take a while, but I also feel like we ease people into it. So it's not something that's gonna, wham you out of nowhere. It's not like we're in the middle of like a happy field and then someone gets their head cut off or something out of nowhere. It's not that extreme. I think the first instance of something like that happening is episode 5, which
Okay.
is also a good indication for me because that is our most rewatched episode. So it means that people are interested in that.
Right.
So we kind of like ease into it over time. And I've once again forgotten the question that started me on this.
Yeah, it was like what steps do you take in terms of like adding dark stuff or
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a
So
darker
very
theme.
slow. We have before we start a campaign, I give a number from 1 to 10 of my players are all okay to go up to 10, but the character you enter is going to change your number
Right.
because there's some characters that can handle things more and there's some characters that can't. So we tend to do things where it's like, what would break your character? If something happened, what would make it so you can no longer play your character? Because I'm not going to do that. And if it's besides that, it's just like, how dark are you able to go before your character would also not be able to be in this anymore? And of the 4 players, 3 of them said 10. So, but the other one who didn't, I'm obviously going to go with the person who
Right.
the lowest score to make everyone feel comfortable. But it was still a pretty high number. So, and I also asked them what they thought our last campaign was, which I would have rated a 10. And some of them said like an 8 or a 7. And I was like, oh no, guys. I don't know what you think a 10 is then. If that was a 7 or an 8, like I'm not going that hard on this.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Straight
Yeah.
like Hostel or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not going to do American Horror Story in our podcast. Like,
Yeah, we try to keep it pretty light in that kind of thing. Our characters are 10 times a little bit crass in terms of like what they're willing to do to get information out of people sometimes, but besides
Yeah.
that,
It rubber bands a little bit between
Yeah.
like our people are psychopaths and lighthearted fun.
Right? Isn't that just
Mostly, I think
between
those
there,
are the same.
back and forth.
right? Lighthearted fun, like lighthearted psychopathy. So, there, like, kind of jumping back into the lore here. Something you haven't said yet that was one of my favorite parts about the lore that you said are the sparks, which are
Yeah.
people that are like could be destined to be chosen ones, but aren't quite chosen ones themselves. And
Mhm.
I have a similar concept in my universe as well. And where does that come from? Why choose that kind of literary technique? Because it's a great way to like make role players special, and I think that that's at least that's
Yeah.
what I use mine for. Is I use it to describe why the role players can do things normal people or commoners can't do, and it's because they're fate born in my terminology. So yeah, is
Yeah.
that kind of the same thing, or and where does that come from in your in the inspirations that you've pulled from?
Yeah, so for the show, I don't think this is a super spoiler. In the future, in one of the other campaigns, there's actually a similar concept. They aren't called sparks. I won't say what they're called because that might be a spoiler. But they're called something else, and so it's kind of like how, again, players seeing how things develop and how things change over time. So having it start kind of in this beginning era with this ability that they have that can eventually lead to having a more advanced ability later on is something that's kind of like how this kind of stemmed and where it came from. um, and then also I didn't want it to be the same though. If it's something where it's like thousands and thousands of years have passed, I wanted to be like, okay, so this is the evolved point, this is in the future what this becomes. How did we get here?
Right.
What was it before that? And that's kind of like how sparks came to be, and how the chosen ones also came to be. And the chosen ones all have a purpose. They all form for a reason. There is something that happens that specific chosen one becomes a chosen one because the world needs them in that moment. But it is something that's also built into this society where it is expected that the chosen one help people. It is expected that they take on their responsibilities and their duties up until the whole time that they have their chosen one powers, because it also is not something that is forever. You don't become the chosen one in this world and you get that until you die. There is a limit. So you have 5 to up to 15 years of when you are active, and you
That's
don't
cool.
know how long that's going to be.
That's
So
cool.
yeah, that's why there are mentors in the world. So they are all of the sparks in this world. um well, not all of the sparks because that would be way too many, but if they all came together. But the PCs and then a couple other sparks are gathered to this facility to be able to be trained to possibly be the next chosen one. Which is, I try to play around it with more than just the stereotypical, you're going to be the next chosen one and it's going to be great and awesome and everyone, you're going to defeat the bad guy and all that. There's a lot more, social structure and things
Right.
involved in this. There's people who don't like sparks. There's people who are jealous of them. There's people who don't want to be sparks, who don't want that responsibility. There's chosen ones who don't want to be chosen ones. It's not clean and simple and clean cut. And there's chosen ones who have bad reputations, and there's chosen ones that were well liked, and there's chosen ones that are kind of treated like washed up celebrities once they're done. So there's more of a social structure to it than just just the simple abilities that they get.
That's really cool. That is awesome. Like you have
Making it a function of society. That's a really cool
Yeah,
concept.
that's
Definitely.
awesome. Like,
Building it in. Like everybody knows. And then, yeah, because of that, you have like obligations because of, everybody's like, yeah, dude, you're like the chosen or whatever. Like that's an interesting dynamic.
I just love like I have a million questions. Like, has there ever been a chosen one that's tried to work against their purpose, or has there ever been someone who tried to cheat the chosen one system and get a spark lit that wasn't supposed to
Feel
be
big.
lit? Yeah, I just
You
Yeah,
can't
I
answer these
feel like
questions.
I know it's come
Right,
it's
no,
come out in game. So I my thing is, if it's come out in game, I feel like I'm allowed to talk about it.
okay.
So because in our server we only say that you can't talk about the most recent episode, but then past that point, it's fair game. So we have spoiler channels. The last released episode, you talk about it there, and then after that, it's fair game. So just mute the whole. That's why we have a separate like area for it. Just mute the whole
Right.
area if you don't want to hear about it. But so there is people who, I think episode 7 is what it's called. It's called the Fallen. There are fallen ones. There are people who were chosen ones who went against what they were supposed to be and are considered, horrible and awful in society. But because they want the chosen one to remain something positive and uplifting and great and they can do no wrong, those people have been wiped out of history. So there's no history books on them. You can't learn about them, or they've only been propped up during the time that they were good. So the first time that the Sparks and the PCs find out about them is through their training, where they're like, we do not want history to repeat itself, so we're going to tell you, but you can't tell anyone else. We don't want to perpetuate this. We don't want people to be suspicious of chosen ones because they are supposed to be good. So that's kind of pushed forward through that narrative. And they also find out that the very first chosen one was also the very first fallen one. So it's been at the inception of when they started within the lore.
Interesting. Man, yeah. So here's another, like, how do you keep all this straight? Because I get asked that question, and the answer is I'm an insane person who stores way too much things that I've come up with, in my own imagination, in my head, where other things like, when the trash comes and, where to buy the best priced dog food should go.
What day it is.
Right, what day it is sometimes.
Very important in these times.
Right.
What day is it?
Yeah, exactly. So how
Time is
do you
nothing.
have some kind of note organization structure? Do you have a wiki? Do you have a OneNote?
I have a master doc.
Okay.
I have a master doc. I use Google Docs to be able to
Yeah.
to write the story and all that. So I've got one big master doc that's got certain plot points and things, certain themes, and any sort of random lore that I want. I have a site that I use to world. I can't remember what it's called. World Anvil or something.
World
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's got like my pantheon on it. That's got the whole timeline on it. Notable figures, things like that. The world map. I created like an interactive world map that's got like all of the major cities and things and stuff like that. So that's been super helpful for me in keeping things straight. Every single session that we play, so not necessarily the episodes that you see, but every single session is a different doc. So I can go back in and read things that I've written. And it's so ridiculous. I added it up the other day. I think it's like over 130 pages for the campaign so far.
Yeah.
It's like ridiculous. And we've played 13. Nope, I think we're on 15 sessions. But one of those sessions can translate between anything between 3 episodes to 8 because of how long we play. So it's hard to. But the easiest thing for me is the wonders of the find function. If I can't remember something, I write a lot of notes on pretty much everything. And I do have pre-planned dialogue for certain NPCs and certain scenes. So I can very easily go and find something important because I'm like, okay, I need to know about what this NPC said about this god during this session, and then I can go find it. It's not super out there. The only thing is when I have to improv lore on the spot, and that's a little trickier to go back and find sometimes when someone asks me a question and I'm like, I should have an answer to that and I don't have it written right now. So we're about to change the whole structure of the world in a few short minutes,
And then you have to go back and reference what episode did I make that up in?
Yeah.
I literally have a code DM who listens to the episode and scribbles things down that I say. Just like, oh, he's gonna need that later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it sounds pretty pretty routine. Lots of notes scribbled down on Word documents and things like that. So yeah, do you have as a writer, do you have plans to take some of this and publish like actual novels or actual like something other than the visual novel, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, when I was a wee lad many years ago, I was a writer before anything else. That's how I kind of got started. I tried to I was like in middle school. I tried to make films with my friends. And when my friends didn't show up to film because we were in middle school and you were all at the mercy of your parents, I ended up getting into art and drawing. And I made my own kind of visual novel stories that way for a while to kind of create my own stories and stuff. And because of that, I've kind of fallen out of the more traditional senses of writing. I think my regular like creative writing skills in terms of sitting down and writing a story have weakened quite a bit. I can write a campaign session in a night, but I don't think I could make it be a readable like novel anymore. I don't think like that's within me as much as I wanted to be a writer growing up. I just think the way that I write has changed to fit more of a DM than a traditional like novelist at this point.
I love the visual novel technique. Do you do the animations yourself?
The opening credits are done by one of our players.
Okay.
So they're done by our player for Theo. They did the animation, the art, the coloring, all that, and then I just went in and did the video components of it. So the compositing, the backgrounds, effects, that kind of stuff. So it was kind of like a collaborative effort, but
Awesome.
he did most of the work because I am an animator. I have a degree in animation, but he's better than me. So like, I was like, you can make the opening. And then I did the ending credits, which are very editing heavy, very kind of more atmospheric. There's not a lot of animation. It's like After Effects puppet tooling for anyone who knows what that is. And so it's simple. It's not like frame by frame or anything like that. But most of I think all of the full bodies of the NPCs I drew, and then any NPCs made by the cast they draw. So they give me the full bodies of those, and then they also make their own references for their PCs. We do utilize tokens, so like what you would use on Roll20 and stuff like that, because we do use battle maps at certain points, and they're like little tiny full body tokens. I guess another word, you could call them chibis, but we prefer to say tokens. That my partner Ripley does, and she makes those. So if there's too many characters in a scene, for all of those references to be on screen, we use these the little tiny Roll20 tokens that go up on screen, so we can have 15 people on a screen if we want, and that's been helpful. So it tends to be the method of 2 to 3 people in a scene. We use the full bodies. More than that, we go down to the tokens.
Yeah, I really like that method of it's almost like there's like I guess a puppeteering style that like when you have a character talking, you just have a image of that character in order to reinforce the idea that that character is who they are and what they look like. And I find it because I'm a creative writer, and I really love the idea of instead of having to write a description in the beginning of a chapter and just hoping your reader remembered it, having that visual aid. And of course, I'm always so jealous of artists. I really wish I could draw my own characters, or the environments and places.
You did draw your own character one time.
Yes.
Move the Seven Sons. Remember him?
Yep. And not one I'm super proud of though. And so yeah, I really like that the visual novel style, and I really think that if you haven't checked it out, go check it out on their YouTube page, because it's really cool. It's really awesome.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, no problem. And so, kind of going into the DM side of things a little bit more. The episodes that you put out on YouTube are obviously very well edited. How much in each session do you keep in mind that you are producing a visual novel and not sitting down at a table with your best friends to just crank out some role play? And what steps go for it.
Yeah, it's helpful in the way that we play already kind of structured itself this way. We didn't change the way that we played at all to be able to do a podcast, where people who we consume a lot of visual media, we've all watched anime and stuff like that, which is why if you watch us, we feel kind of like we're in anime sometimes, just because our art styles like that, the way that we structure shows. A lot of my inspirations have come from that kind of storytelling. Like even if I don't consume that media as much anymore, a lot of my inspirations come from it, as you might be able to see with my Inuyasha pillows behind me. But that's I've pointed them out now, and you'll look at them the whole time.
Can't stop.
So having those kind of influences in how that we play and perform, and also I do voice acting, or I have done voice acting in the past, so that's kind of helped with some of the acting aspects of it. My partner has done voice acting in the past, and the others of us have just been, we've just been role playing for a long time, or have role played or voice acted for each other when we've asked for favors and things like that. So we all have some experience with that, which I feel like is really important in terms of producing a podcast, especially as a DM. You have to be able to, separate yourself from, okay, I'm going to do a funny goblin voice now, and it's going to sound bad, but I have to put my all into it, or no one's going to believe this character, so that's something that you have to just kind of get over that to be able to play and to podcast. But the structure that we do, almost everything that you hear in session, minus the fancier editing to make it sound nice, is done while we play. So any voice mods that are used in the game are used while we play. I have a setup that allows me to use them real time. So that helps the characters be immersed in the world. It also helps them if they're like, hey, Cassie, the voice mod that you're using right now, we can't understand what you're saying, and you need to fix it. So that's kind of helpful. That's only happened once or twice, but we have used it in a way where it's like I'm very easily able to adjust it in the moment, and I don't have to worry about having to fix it later. Same with any music that is heard at the time. I also play it while we play, so the same songs are usually the ones that end up in the final product as well. And we take breaks. We try and take breaks every hour, so that utilizes itself really well for the episodic way that we release our stuff, which is about 30 to 70 minutes, just depending on the length. So when we take a break, it's like, I know we're about to take a break, so I have to find a way to end this scene in a way that's going to feel final, so that way the episode can end, is kind of how that helps our structure. And also be like, okay, we're nearing an hour mark. I have to find a place that's a good ending point,
Do you find it difficult to come to a conclusion like that on such short chunks? I know for us, we do a ton of role play, and we just sit here and we'll get immersed into somebody losing a shoe, and it'll take 45 minutes for us to find it. And it turns into, this is maybe not enough content for an episode. Do you have trouble with the same kind of thing?
I feel I do go in and cheat. So sometimes I'll go in and I'll be like, okay, we're moving on to the next scene here, but this episode's gone on this long and it needs to end. So I'll find a way to go in and just be like, and then let me record real fast. Everyone goes to bed and it's nighttime now and the session is over, and no one has to know that I did that, except now everyone does.
Everybody knows.
Oh, it's okay.
Secrets of production.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's okay. Sometimes I kill monsters when they have HP left. It's all right. We cheat from time to time.
If the combat's going on for too long and everyone's just like, I hit it, I hit it again, I keep hitting it. It's dead yet? You get to a certain point where it's time to end it.
Right.
Our episodes, so for every hour and a half that's recorded, I get an hour out of it usually. Okay. So I cut quite a bit. I cut quite a bit of dead time. I cut inside jokes, especially referring to other campaigns that people wouldn't understand the references to. So I do condense quite a bit. So taking those breaks, and that's why we don't have a consistent, we're always an hour, it's whatever makes sense. And also whatever I can edit that week, because I've had shorter episodes because I'm like, episode's due tomorrow and I need to be done. So it's going to be done at 40 minutes this week, everyone, because it's not just the audio that I have to worry about. I do the visual components of it too. So every episode takes about 10 hours to edit, and I have to do that every week. So it takes a lot, and that's just because I don't know how to not do that. So
yeah,
oh yeah,
I feel ya on that.
Damn it! You don't have any secret editing techniques that we can steal and make all our
there aren't any.
So much easier.
There aren't any secret editing techniques.
No. Oh God.
I am also unfortunately very particular about our audio tracks. We all record separately, and we do so everyone opens Audition or Audacity or whatever they use, and then we all start recording at the same time, and then we all clap, and then I sync up our audio that way. And so we also stop our recordings at the hour breaks, so that way if anyone's audio accidentally messes up, most of the recording will always still be intact. We do a mass recording where I'm recording everything. So if anyone's audio cuts out or we lose it, we have a master recording that I can reference. So that's something I highly recommend. I highly recommend having 2 sources when you are doing a podcast, because if someone's audio ever cuts out, even if one version is worse, you have that and you will thank yourself for it when a whole episode is saved. And you can just give the preface of like, we lost it and I'm sorry you have to hear the low quality version of it, but it's better than you not knowing a whole episode's worth of content, which has been
Craig
helpful
for that.
I'm very, very particular about the audio that we use, and when I've used Craig in the past, my audio's cut out at certain points when people were talking. So so that's why we do that method. It does, I also, whenever anyone's not talking, I cut that out. So it takes a very long time to edit, and it looks like I'm creating some kind of like puzzle in, you know, in Audition when I'm editing. So
making Eric feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. No, I totally. This is just like, yes, editing.
I wish I'd known that 6 months ago.
No, I mean, that's the whole like, we all record on separate tracks, and that's been a process for us to get to here. But,
again, this wasn't our very first podcast that we did. The very first one that we did, we didn't have any music or anything when we played. We just, sat down. I had a master recording, and that was all. That was all that we used. So everyone's audio levels were different. Everyone's mic levels were different. My audio sounded great, obviously, because I'm the DM, and everyone else sounds like they're in a toaster or a microwave. So we definitely have learned from that first one. It also helps because when you talk over each other, you can just slide tracks around. You can just move it.
It's like magic.
Our episode 1 was using Me6 to record, and then it evolved into Craig, and now we're using Audacity and getting all the different tracks. So it's definitely evolving, but it's sort of you can see the quality evolve with the episode number.
I feel like obviously you're always gonna be like, your first episode, I could fix it, I could make it better, but I do feel like we start pretty strong in terms of our audio quality. I feel like in terms of a first episode, we're pretty good, honestly. I don't feel bad saying that because you should be proud of your work, but we're also still pretty new. So we started releasing June 11th and have, I think, 12 episodes out now. We released our 12th today. So we had a 3-episode original release. So the first week that we came out, we had 3 come out all at once, because that's also a thing if you're making a podcast. If someone enjoys your work and you release 1 episode and there's no more else, sometimes they can very easily fall off the wagon. So starting with 3 episodes gives people enough to hook. And then the weekly release also, I know you don't have to do weekly releases, but I feel like it keeps the momentum up the best for us. So
we have a list of things that we're going to do next time, when we have a second podcast, because we're still on our first.
That is
And so we
actually following up on something you said earlier about the hour break thing. How long of sessions do you typically run then? Do you play for 6-8 hours? Do you play for 3?
We've gone up to 8.
Okay.
So it depends on so I check in about the 3-hour mark. I check in with everyone. So we'll go for an hour, take a break, go for an hour, take a break, go for an hour, take a break, and I'll be like, okay, so it's been 3 hours. How are we feeling? Do we want to keep going? And then after that point, every break that we take, I try and continue to check in. We have decided no more 8-hour sessions. We did like 4 or 5 of those, and that was fun and it was great, but we don't want to burn out. So we're not going to do that anymore. And that was because we were at a point where I had so much written that we could just keep going whenever. I was like, I have all of this written forever at this point. And now we're kind of to the point where I write arcs at a time. And that was a really, really big arc, which is why I had so much planned for it. And we're at like smaller arcs. So once we get to a point where we've hit where I've done writing, we kind of go on like a little mini hiatus for a couple weeks in terms of sessions till I can finish writing the next one. And then we go back into it. But no one will know that because we have so many pre-recorded episodes that we're going to be releasing stuff for, we recorded yesterday, a year from now.
Right.
Just because we had so much content.
Weekly then? Do you play weekly typically?
If I have everything planned, but we also try to be very, very flexible. Something I absolutely try to stress to my players, because we're not a live show, because we have so much bag stock, is it is okay to not play. We have so much that we already have done, and I highly recommend getting a large bag stock. I honestly recommend like 10 episodes if you can do it, because it is so nice to not have to worry about that. It is so nice to be able to say, hey, I'm having a bad day and this is a public podcast and I don't want to play today. Or to only maybe get an hour or 2 hours in and be like, hey guys, I don't think I can keep going. And because it's a public production, I don't think you should have to push through that. You're putting yourself out there already, and like very highly stressing that people don't realize that doing stuff publicly like this, even if it's for fun, can put a lot of pressure on people.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, you're playing a game, you're playing D&D. And I'm like, I've seen friendships end over games, it's a lot more immersive. And because you're putting so much of yourself into it, it can be a lot harder to separate yourself from it. So it's very much a check-in basis. And if we can play weekly, we obviously will. But I have no problems with even going on. Like we've taken a couple month breaks because we started recording in January, because obviously the world is wild right now, and sometimes we just don't want to play for a bit because stuff's stressful. So
right, that's understandable.
I get that. Yeah, see, I think we do something similar. We release bi-weekly, but we record generally weekly, so that we have that flex to kind of, like, we've got stuff built up on backlog, and if we ever need a week off or somebody's got something that comes up, it's not, oh shit, what are we going to do for our next release? It's, okay, we've got 4 or 5 in the can here already, so it's fun.
We also edited. Oh no.
Yeah, we all live in the Midwest. Yeah. And
I'm from Iowa, so.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Okay. Ooh, yeah. Hey.
We're all from Iowa.
Not anymore. I moved, so I'm in Minneapolis now. So me and 2 other players, we all live together, which means if our internet does go out, we're all gone. But also like we can't play anyway. If one person goes out, it's not like, oh, we can keep going. It's not like a regular game. But yeah, so we all live together and stuff, or half of us live together. And I would also recommend, like, a big thing with just preparing things beforehand is we edited the first 7 episodes completely before we started releasing, so I could heavily focus on promo. So I didn't have to worry about editing anything those first 7 weeks, or it wasn't 7 because we released 3 at once, but the first like month or so that we were releasing, I didn't have to worry about editing anything. It was just kind of like when I felt like it, I could start working on the next one. But that meant that we had all that time to really hit it hard and really focusing on promo and establishing ourselves in the community and getting to know people. And I mean, I'd never done anything like this. And people, like, the first time we did our podcast, we only posted on YouTube. We didn't have any outside social media platforms or anything. And ever since then, we've had a lot of people come up to us and ask us and be like, how did you get such a big following and get like such good numbers and engagement so fast? And I think one thing that I really want to stress to people is we posted on a platform that we already had people on. Mm-hmm. So when people are comparing themselves to us, we started on a YouTube channel that already had 9,000 subscribers on it because it was my personal animation channel. And because we had a visual element to our show, people wanted to still watch it because there's art and stuff involved in it. So, that's why within a month, our first episode, already hit like 6 or 7 or whatever 100 views that it had in a month. And I know it takes a lot of people a really long time to hit that kind of number after a 1-week release with no podcasting experience really before that. So that, like, because it's so hard not to compare yourself to others. And so that's something I really want to stress is, like, I'm super, super active on social media, way more than I should be. I try to interact with people as much as I possibly can and make those interactions be meaningful. Because I also I don't want to, like, suck up to anyone or anything like that. That's not the point. I'm here to make connections and make friends, not to become a marketing buddy. Right. And that's been honestly like the best method for us. And when people come and they ask us, I'm like, we are not a podcast that you want to compare yourself to, because we are so different than what most people do. So don't compare yourself to us, because in terms of what I normally do, our numbers are super low in terms of what my channel normally does, because it's new and no one knows what I'm doing, and neither do I half the time. But that's kind of been. But from a podcasting perspective, we look like we're doing really well, because it's a slow burn and it's very hard to do well in podcasting. So that's just something I want to stress, because people ask us that a lot, and then they go to our channel and are like, "How'd you get that many subscribers?" And I'm like, "It's because I've been doing YouTube for 10 years. This wasn't a podcasting channel before,
Doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
Well, and I think a big thing to keep in mind, and regardless of what you're doing, if you're trying to create and grow yourself and create something that is meaningful, don't compare yourself to others at all. I mean, you're creating your thing, and set yourself small goals and work toward those. And if you look at other people, you're just gonna get upset,
Right.
Absolutely.
unless you win the lottery and you're like, go viral immediately and have a zillion followers. But that doesn't happen to most people. So the idea is, make goals for yourself and make it meaningful for you and the people who enjoy your content.
Yeah, and I would also say don't if you're trying to make your way into the community, don't go for the big guns right away. Don't be like, okay, well, I have to make friends with the person with 10,000 followers
Right.
because that's how I'm going to make it. Like, don't just, if you actively work with people and engage with the people that you genuinely want to have friendships and interactions with, doesn't matter what their follower count is. You're just going to grow together, Right. So that's kind of like also another thing that I've really been stressing to people, is just, if you vibe with someone, if you connect with someone, connect with them more, and make your own little community, make your own little space for it.
Exactly.
I mean,
that's what it really there's nothing genuine about going and reaching out to these huge channels or huge people and trying to get siphon people from them or whatever.
That's not how it works.
Right.
Usually get seen for that, and then it's not.
Right.
Yeah, you get seen as
to build a product people are going to enjoy. Sorry.
And that's also the thing, is if you're going into podcasting, especially D&D podcasting, you already have an audience. It's your players. So as long as they're having a good time and they're enjoying it, honestly, one of the funnest things of this has been editing episodes that are months old and having the cast re-listen to them, and them seeing all the foreshadowing and seeing things that are being implemented into the game right now, and freaking out about it. That's been one of the funnest parts of this.
Oh yeah. I
love
be
super
back.
rewarding.
Yeah.
I add music to the podcast after he edits it, and listening back to months ago episodes, and getting the little jokes and and the little bits of foreshadowing that Kyron's thrown in there. That's a lot of fun. And I'm one of the players in that game, and I think that's a big thing. You're still playing D&D. You're still having fun. You're still doing the thing that you enjoy doing, regardless of how many followers you have or whatever.
So I think this is a great place to take a quick break. We're going to take 10 minutes to get ourselves refreshed before the last half hour or so of the time we have together. Brett, if you want to play us out, you are the master.
Oh boy,
ceremonies.
I'm out of practice after.
That's right.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's all right. You remember, you have to mess up at least once.
I will.
Otherwise, it doesn't count. Yeah.
So thanks everybody for jumping in. If you like what you're watching, you can find our Discord and stuff down below. You can join there, hang out in the community. There's a bunch of different games that run there. All sorts of really great people. Anyway, there was a noise.
That might be
there's
me.
your mess up.
I was gonna say
okay.
loud.
I'm next to a very busy street, so you might have some really cool motorcycles going by sometimes. Really cool.
I love the loud ones because they're they're cool.
They're louder to show that they're cooler. So
you can see them better when they're louder.
You can follow us, subscribe on here. We have a Patreon if you want to throw us that moolah, that money, that cash money. We do a podcast every other Friday that comes out. It won't be this Friday, but next. And it's called Dragons of Paralandia. You can find it anywhere you can find podcasts at. I think I've submitted it to every podcast thing on the planet. and we do a stream every other Monday, which will be next Monday, called Gods of Aether, and that's here on Twitter. So you can find that here. If you followed us, you'll get a nice little ring-a-ding on your phone.
Yeah.
Other than that, this is Cassiroll. Follow them on Twitter at Cassiroll. Is just at Cassiroll on Twitter.
On Twitter, it's Cassiroll Chan. So CassirollChan. Another unfortunate thing from my past that has come to haunt me, that I can never change because that is attached to my YouTube. So
Yep. All right, and there's the YouTube link in the chat, so you can jump on there and follow them there. I'm going to change my name in Discord to Shady Ankle Chan.
There you go.
We will be back in
10
minutes.
All right. Yep. 10 minutes. We'll take a 10-minute break and then we'll be back. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome.
And we're back. Hi, everybody. Back
This
again.
episode of Table 13 was brought to you by Broken Promises.
Yes.
As
every single one. Yes. Breaks are usually longer than 10 minutes, but we keep saying 10 minutes because we're monsters, really. So we are still here with Cassiroll, talking about the visual novel, The Chosen Ones. Find it on YouTube. So yeah, this is part of the interview here where we relax even further. And
Bags threw in a question there. I think we could.
Oh yeah.
So as far as it's sort of along the same lines of what I was asking with how much do your characters decide versus how much do you decide? But he was asking what your thoughts are on crowdsourcing your editing work to a handful of community members to help you focus on marketing and the other aspects. So I think he means more like direct production efforts rather than creative world building stuff probably. But
yeah. I mean, if we ever got to a point where I felt like that was a good, smart move to make, I would. But we don't have a Patreon, we don't have a Ko-fi, we don't take any donations for what we do, and we currently aren't planning to. So this is 100% just passion for us right now, and it's something that I'm not sure if or when we get to a point where we would want to monetize, if we will, because we are close friends, and I know bringing money into friendships can create some issues, and I do want to be very, very careful about that, because people who are super, super close have just ruined relationships from bringing money into it. So it's something that is in the back of my mind if it ever comes up. But for now, while we are a project that is in the hole that I spend money on rather than make, I don't plan to put that stuff into other people's hands, because all the art that we do, I pay them to make it. My partner makes the thumbnails and she makes the tokens. My friend made the opening animation and I paid them for that work. We are friends, and this podcast is a passion thing, but I'm not going to ask them to do that work for free. And so if we did ever get to a point where I got someone else to edit it, I think more than anything, I'd have someone focus on the marketing rather than the editing. I am so particular about things. I'm particular about what we keep in, and I'm particular about what we take out, that I think it's just so much easier for me to do it. It's just, I know what I'm comfortable with. I know what I want. I have experience editing, so I don't necessarily need to have a professional editor when I do some of it on my own. And it's not like I was trained to be a professional editor. It's just, it fell into my lap because I'm a jack of all trades and people came to me asking for additional work. So it's not like I know all the terms and know exactly what I'm doing and everything like that, but tutorials are great and you should look them up. And your clients never have to know that you didn't have any training in that before you started it.
As long as they're happy with what you deliver.
Yeah, as long as they're happy with it. It doesn't matter if you've only ever edited their podcasts and no one else's before, it's that kind of stuff. So in terms of the actual physical production value of it, outside of paying people to do assets, I don't think I would ever hire someone to edit it at this point. Captions are something we're looking into, and it is something I've considered in terms of YouTube does do auto captions, but they're not great, especially with voice mods. So that is something I want to do before we get much farther, is to start looking into fixing those captions for those to make our stuff more accessible and turning them also into transcripts. So I have considered, like, do I want it? Because man, it can get expensive. It can get, like, with even an hour, it can be like over like $80 per episode. So it's like, that's another thing I already do outside of this in terms of work. So it's like, yes, I pay everyone else in it, but I'm not getting paid. So behind the DMing and all the other stuff, the 10 hours is just the editing. So if I'm planning a session, if I'm playing a session, recording a session, all that other stuff, yeah, it can definitely add up. So there are aspects of the production I would eventually like to put off onto other people. I just don't think we're at a point right now where it makes sense. I don't think we have enough of a fan base. I don't think that we have enough content. And I don't think we've shown people that we can be consistent enough. We're still, 2 months in? It's going to take a while, I think, before we build enough trust for people to start actually financially supporting us to be able to have those things.
Right. Makes sense. And I definitely appreciate the, like, just not being super comfortable with letting anybody else do the editing. I definitely appreciate that sense.
I'm sure someone else could probably do it better than me, but it's just, I know what I want, and it takes so much more time to be like, I want you to cut out this, this, and this, and this, this, and this. Also, I've got a certain amount of ums everyone is allowed to say. So,
That's I means for us. Yeah, that's the one that I if you start your sentence with I mean, if 3 people do it in a row, 2 of those are getting cut.
It's like if if you're an artist and you probably aren't going to pay somebody to draw your character portrait for you. You know what you want out of it. It's less work. Just do it than it is to explain everything you want to make it fit what you're looking for. As far as transcripts are concerned, there's a member of our community who does transcripts, and I'll send you her info if you're interested in looking into that. Her name is Flute. She's probably in the chat.
Awesome.
Hi, Flute.
But yeah, she's pretty great. So if you're looking into something like that, then I'll hook you up with her and see maybe something there can happen.
Oh boy.
Oh no, here's the dead air we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
We're
no.
doing so well.
It's happened.
It's happened.
Finally happened.
Oh god. We have been talking for like an hour and 40 minutes or 14 minutes, I guess, but still. So that's a long time to come up with things to say in a setting such as this. But no, again, we really want to say thank you for coming on the show. This has been a lot of fun. Your world is really interesting, and beyond like watching all the episodes, is there any other places that someone could find more lore about your world? Is the World Anvil available to the public?
No, because it's got spoilers, so it's not available to the public. It's more so for the cast. And then also, I mean, the best place honestly is just to join our Discord, because we have channels specifically for all of the art and NPCs. And we also have, ask the cast areas and things like that. So whenever anyone wants to know more about stuff, as long as it's not like a spoiler, I'm willing to like explain it usually. And I find that that's usually just the best way to talk to us about it. Without me, because then I can think about it and be like, is this a spoiler? Can I talk about this? And also someone asked, so then I know that they want to know, and I'm not just spewing information out into the world that no one wants. We do also, for those who kind of like the more role play aspects, we actually have Twitter accounts for the PCs in character.
Oh, that's cool.
That's pretty cool.
So we have 4 of those, and they have they're like ask blogs kind of. So they each have, like, I don't know if you know what Curious Cat is. They each have a Curious Cat, which people can go into that forum and send them messages, and then they can use that to reply. And because we're all artists, sometimes they'll do art and stuff to reply to those comments. And we do have one NPC too. I did a poll on it, and they voted on which NPC they wanted, who also has one, and she's one of the mentors. They picked the meanest one. So anyone who doesn't know that that's an RP blog will just see me being mean on Twitter,
Just some jerk.
That's a
good stuff,
really
though.
cool
That
idea.
is an
I really
interesting
like that.
concept.
It's
That's a
very
good idea.
fun. And
Yeah.
honestly, even if you don't have a lot of people follow it or a lot of people like interact with those accounts, it does also create more content for your main account. So like I'll retweet things from there. I'll retweet art from the cast that they post on their things and stuff like that. So it's like it still also does create content and engagement for your stuff. Outside of those accounts, you can like intermingle and combine them and stuff. And then the people who do like that kind of stuff or want to ask questions for the PCs can have those kind of like almost like interactive moments with a character. It's also very funny because having any of them, considering they're in fantasy times, having social media is just a funny concept, you know?
Right.
Up on, Flitter or whatever.
Yeah, I think the very first Aviath, who's our like lawful good paladin, who's like super over the top. He's kind of supposed to be like almost like a stereotype of what a paladin is. I think he talks in like all caps on his Twitter. And the very first tweet he ever made was like how to clean armor or something. They're very fun, and people
That's
ask a lot of funny questions too. So it's good.
That is a great idea. That's a really cool concept. I'm gonna suggest that we try and steal that. Because
we stole it from other
making me
people.
work.
The idea from it originally came from on Tumblr that people used to make ask vlogs for characters, and so we took that concept and put it into Twitter essentially, and that's kind of where the idea originally came from. So everything else is just rehashed old ideas from other people. And it's not stealing; it's just innovating.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing new under the sun.
Nothing new under the sun. Exactly. So, but yeah, this was awesome. Thank you very much for coming by and imparting your wisdom and some of your experience. Really quick, how long have you been involved in role playing? What was your first role playing experience? This is something I should have asked, an hour ago.
But, I mean, how far back do we want to go? Because high school, technically, I did like text RP stuff with friends in high school. Yep. Back in the day, and they weren't good. Your kids in high school, everyone's edgy. Everyone's got demon parents. It's really stupid stuff. And then we started role playing as a group. Our player Aviath, or Jay, his actual name, he's not Aviath. He made a text RP 3 or 4 years ago, and we played that. And then for a while it was just on a forum. And for a while we did that back and forth because we all met through art originally. And after that we moved to D&D when text RP was just like not enough. I keep joking. I was like, guys, when are we going to LARP? When are we going to take the next step and move on, But yeah, that's kind of how we started. Really and I forgot to say our Twitter for the actual account. Yeah. It's just Chosen One's DND. So Chosen One's DND, that's all it is. Simple.
Easy to remember.
Yep.
No Chan at the end.
No Chan. And it will never be added because I've used that link everywhere. Also, pro tip for anyone starting a podcast, do not make the name of your channel or anything the name of your podcast. Make it a more enveloping name, because after Chosen Ones, I don't know what I'm going to do with that account, because all the links will lead to it and all of our following will be there. And that's a problem for Cassie 2 years down the line, but it doesn't have to be a problem for you. So
make an innocuous name like Irrational Radio.
Right.
Something like literally goddamn anything.
Something I wish I knew in advance.
Oh, don't worry. You've given us so many things that are just like, God, yeah, man. Yeah. Should have talked to you before we made the podcast.
That would have been cool to know.
That would have been, wow, that's such a good idea that we didn't do.
That's just so bizarre to hear to me because we're still so new to this. But you learn from everyone though. You learn from everyone though.
You've got everybody does things a little differently, and that's we like to have these conversations because typically this program is sort of designed to give new DMs or players tips and sort of advice on our limited insight on the world of role playing and DMing, and to get new fresh faces in here and get their ideas and their input is really refreshing, because we're just 3 people that have been role playing together for 1.5 million years that kind of have the same viewpoint on most things. So it's really great to have that new take on stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I didn't actually listen to podcasts before we started podcasting. I listened to a little bit of The Adventure Zone, and that was about it. And half of an episode of Critical Role, and then it's just too long for me. I just couldn't do it.
They are long episodes.
They're very long, and I just can't. I can only listen to a couple episodes of podcasts a week, so I've only been listening to pilots right now. But the thing that I tell people all the time is, especially new in the community, it is really good to listen to other people's podcasts, not just because it creates that sense of community, but also you can learn things from someone, whether it's good or bad. When you start an episode, I say to always listen to it till the end, even if you don't like it, and just analyze what about it you don't like or what about it you do like, because there are always takeaways. And then to always shout that person out or review them or something, because it is so hard in the podcasting world to get reviews and to get that kind of exposure. So it's just good to do that, to give people that knowledge that someone is listening and someone is watching, and it's not people just clicking play and stopping. So it's like racking up views, but to know that there's an actual person watching their show.
And it's not your mom or your best friend.
Right.
Yeah. Or just you accidentally clicking the play button,
Over and over all day. Gotta get some views, right?
Yeah, I'm guilty of that with our YouTube videos. Sometimes I'll have to go and check something for a timestamp, and I'm just inflating the views. These aren't real views,
Sometimes
I know that the well's been poisoned.
Yeah.
My view
well, with YouTube, it's nice because I can go into the analytics and I can see, it tells me a percentage, so I can see peaks. I can see when people go back and rewatch and when people drop off. And so I can go to the lowest peak and it says, okay, 19% of your audience stayed to this point. And so I'm like, okay, so that means 19% of my views are real and people watch the whole thing. And that's how I've been using it to gauge what our actual listening base is, which has been kind of nice. So I think right now we have about 40 people who watch every week. And then the first episode is 150 or something who watched all the way to the end. So nice. So I do like that about YouTube is, I know some people are like, oh, that freaks me out. I don't want to know who actually watched my episode to the end. But I think it's really good because you can see, like I said, you can see peaks. You can see when people rewatch things. You can see what people really liked. And I think that's super helpful for moving forward, to be like, people really like this when I do this, or or this kind of scene, or this kind of voice mod that I used or something. Which the episode that we introduced, the more heavily used voice mods, is our most watched episode. So that kind of gives me the idea of people like that. They like effects. They think it's cool. It gives you that kind of knowledge moving forward.
People don't like Kyron's effects when he does the voices in Corthax's head. Nobody likes that.
I think that's just because you don't like the voices in Corthax's head, but that's an inside joke. But
inside his head.
Inside his head, yes. It's getting crowded in there, isn't it, buddy?
It is.
Yeah. I don't like it.
Well, we're approaching midnight, and I definitely turn into a pumpkin around midnight, and we wouldn't want that on camera. It's a grotesque, horrible transformation. Shed
American
my skin.
Werewolf in London,
only pumpkin. Yeah, it's horrible. You don't want any part of it. So we will be signing off here in a few minutes. Again, Cassie, I want to thank you very much for taking time, talking to us, imparting your experience, and having some jokes and some laughs with us.
Take a second to plug anything and everything you're involved in as well here at the end.
Yep. Oh, that's it. That's all I'm doing right now is the podcast. So no other big projects right now.
Excellent.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah.
Well,
Chosen Ones D&D then.
We'd like to send you an Irrational Radio T-shirt for being on the show.
That's awesome.
I'll ask you for your personal details here in the DMs, but
here in the podcast right now. What's your address? What's your social security number? Mother's maiden name.
You can hold your driver's license send me to the camera, please. I need to take a picture of it for the
front and back.
And back, yeah.
Got any recent checks you want to show me too?
Exactly.
Just,
It's gotta be recent though, within the last 6 months.
3-month-old
yeah.
bills, anything like that.
All right. Well, thank you again. Is there anything you want to add, Brett? You want to plug things, or do you think that the break...
Discord, Patreon, podcast, Twitch.
Dragons of
Dragons of
Paralandia.
Paralandia, Gods of Aether.
There we go.
They
Rational
don't normally
Radio.
do this
reruns
place
on
anymore.
Sundays.
I know. I
Oh
like
yeah,
making
Sunday
going
rerun
show.
day. Every Sunday we rerun everything forever.
Yep.
It's like a whole big
just
old
what
block.
we've done over the last 2 weeks.
Okay, over the last 2 weeks.
We finally have enough stuff to fill an entire day, so we've just dumped it into Sundays.
We use 2 weeks worth of content for those Sundays, guys. Right. Right, but there's like dozens of other videos.
I don't know. I can't count that high.
No.
But anyway, thank you very much again. Check it out. Check out everybody. Support creators. Wear a mask. Be safe. Stay. The world's crazy, and sometimes you need a little escapism every now and then. So, thank you again, everybody, and have an excellent night.